So let's make this kick and this sub happy best friends. Sound better in this mix. And in mixing in general, the kick and the sub are going to be kind of the most important part, especially with electronic music or like future pop music. Normally the bass and the kick hate each other because they're in the very same range and they hurt each other if they're not working together. So let's make them work together. And we're going to do that with multiband compression and maybe a little bit of compression and maybe a gate. I don't know. We'll have to listen and figure it out. So I'm going to first grab a multiband compressor and put it on my kick. I'm using a FabFilter. You can use Ableton. You can use any multiband. We are going to do it the exact same way all the time, especially in the new Ableton. So now if you go down here towards the FabFilter effect, whatever effect you're going to use, is a sidechain button. Click it. Go find your sub. Boom. Bass and sub. So now we're sidechaining the sub to the kick. That means we are sending the kick signal. It's not that we're taking the sub signal away. We are sending the sub signal to the kick to be analyzed and used in the multiband compressor, which we're only going to use a little bit of this multiband for the kick in general. And we're going to come back to that. We don't need it yet. So I'm going to turn that off, but leave that on your kick, sidechained. Go to your sub now, and we're going to place another multiband at the end. You always want any mixed side chaining type of stuff. You want at the end of all your effects so that nothing else is affecting the sound and it can be mixed properly. And we are going to side chain this one. Go back down here from the kick. So now we're sending the kick to the sub. So let's start there. And in your multiband, you're going to want to find the frequencies that the kick is using. And so the kick, we already know on this song is coming at about like a 96. And so I'm going to change, or 97, I think is what it was. 97 hertz. And I am just to be safe and cut it all the way down so that we just, all these low ends down here. In FabFilter, I need to go select the sidechain. So right now it's only interior. It's only using the sub sound. And we want to tell exterior, look outside of your sound and find yourself. You can even audition it. So we're going to listen to the kick now from the sub. So we have it auditioned, so you can't hear the sub, you can hear the kick. Now if we bring the sub in, see every time that kick comes in, this compressor is bringing the volume down on the bass of the sub, on the low end frequencies where that kick's coming through. So every time that kick's coming in, the volume of the sub bass is coming down. And we don't want to hit the higher end because we want those harmonic frequencies to stay present. So on those shitty iPod headphones that all the people are going to be listening to your music on, I can still kind of hear it. But we do want to cut these low end frequencies out because they don't like each other. I like to always go to extremes and then move on from there. So obviously we wouldn't want that. That does not sound good. If you look at the volume of the kick coming into this threshold, it's like punching through and then resting as a long release. We don't want all that release. So that's about good. You can almost use the threshold to gauge your release on the kick, using the kick to almost be your release, because you almost want it to be simultaneous. You want your attack though on your multiband compressor to be very quick, and they do percentages on FabFilter. So I'm gonna do about a 3.7%, 4%. We're gonna bring this range down until we're not hearing conflict. And sometimes this can be kind of hard to hear. What you're kind of listening for is the sub bass almost getting louder when the sub bass isn't louder when the kick hits. So when the kick hits, if the sub is like bouncing with it, which kind of you think would sound cool, that's them conflicting. You don't want that. You don't want the sub bass to be doing that. You want the kick to be coming through. So we're going to pull this range down on how much the threshold can affect the sound until we're just getting a smooth combination of the two. So I'm going to try to pull down this release a little bit just to see if we can get that sub bass to come back a little bit sooner. It seems it's like it's lagging behind a tiny bit. You see how when the kick comes in, it's not much dB we're taking off. We're not taking that much reduction off yet. We can take a lot more off here if there was enough sub bass or enough conflict. And right now I can't hear that much. We could always come back. But when the kick comes in, you want the sub to definitely come lower, unless this is the sound you're going for, which you can use some effects to do a sound like this, but you want it to sound as though the kick and the sub are one. So when the kick comes through, the sub is replacing the bass of the kick, or almost combining with it to make a smooth sub bass kick concoction, what have you. But you don't want it to be like kick sub. You want it to be like kick sub, kick sub. You want that release to be very smooth with the descending of the kick volume coming out. The kick hits and descends. The volume goes on that descend. You want that sub to be replacing that sound pretty fluidly, unless you're going for that effect. So that can be really difficult or not. Right now, I think we got a good sound going on right now. But to be safe, we want to take out more. So I'm going to try to lower this threshold and see if we can make it even more smooth. It's going to be difficult though. So we are getting that little bit of lag. I'm going to try to lower this release a tiny, tiny bit. It sounds good. We can come back to it later. You always normally come back to your effects later. Right now, it sounds reasonable. But now let's go to our kick. Now we are going to even better help the low end of this kick not be so low endy, if that makes sense. You want to punch, the kick to punch, but then get pulled out before that sub comes in. And another way to do that, or with the sidechain that we just did on the multiband of the sub, is to use an expansion technique. They have a compressor and an expander. An expander is going to almost act as if it's a gate, letting the sound through and removing it when it's not there. And so right now, if we were to take this range super low, and we could solo this kick, bringing the threshold is going to be when we're letting sound through. So let's solo this. We want to bring that threshold up to a very punchy kick, very punchy, quick. So see how it's hanging out up here pretty long? You want it to be quick. We can actually mess with this knee, make it quicker. That's pretty good. So now what we're going to want to do is raise this range back up, bring the range down to maybe about -6, put the attack to as quick as you possibly can on yours, leave the release where it is right now. I'm going to bring the range down all the way just so we can hear what we're doing. So if you can barely hear it, but we are making the sub of the kick quicker. Instead of it being like, but, it's like, but. It's a little quicker, so it just gives it a little more jab, and it's going to be less interfering with that sub. So if you can hear the difference, you got some good ears. You're probably not hearing the difference, but it's a big difference. It's a reasonable difference. It's not huge, but it's going to help a little bit with the sub bass of that kick. That isn't that prominent, but it is prominent. If you solo both of them and listen to them, you can hear how the kick is taking out the sub. And later on in the mix, if you want to make that less, or if you want to mess around with this release so the sub is pulled out longer or not as long, it's kind of like what you feel out later in the mix. But right now, let's bypass it and see if we can hear a difference. You can hear a little bit of distortion, and that low end's not liking it. With it on, that sub gets out of the way. And so do this with all your subs, all your kicks, sidechain that kick to that sub. Basics. Just do it. Your mixes will come out a lot better. But that is how you do it. That's how you sidechain using a multiband compressor, the kick to the sub.